Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology, and this is the Mbongi. Today is Monday, March the 14th, 2022, and today's topic asks the question, do Black Greeks have an identity crisis? Addressing misconceptions about Black Greek letter organizations and African identity. All that and more when we return in just a moment. Welcome. Again, thank each and every one of you for joining us here today. And again, I am your host, Brother asarimhotep. And this is going to be a very engaging and interesting topic for today. But before I do that, of course, I like to acknowledge all of the community in Mbongi that has made themselves, known in the chat room. And so peace and blessings to 764 is the code, who says, I've been waiting for someone to tackle this topic. Facts over feelings. Thank you for joining us. And Firelight and Tist says, oh, I thought you liked short vids. You in for a long one tonight. I got questions saved. Been waiting to ask you about this. No doubt. I'm here for all of it. So thank you for joining. Savages is in the building. Says, I also have been waiting for this topic to surface. I don't believe most of the Black Greeks have encountered one to be African. We'll address all of that tonight. And peace to Teti Ursuma Rasa Neferu. Thank you for joining the conversation, and everything is in the building. And Aaron Edwards is in the building. Hotep to you. Dr. Duarte Odara is in the building all the way out of Brazil. Thank you for joining the conversation. And Salute Champ is in the building. Thank you for supporting the channel and viewing. And so make sure that each and every single one of you who is just joining the conversation, reach over to your mouse or your pad and make sure that you that is right. Hit the like button. Make sure that you share this link with your friends and colleagues so that they can join the conversation with us live here today. And if you have not already, please subscribe to the channel, and so that you will be one of the first to know when we go live or when I upload a video. And you'll be in the loop in terms of what's going on with the channel and the like. And so just two announcements. First and foremost, At the end of the summer, I haven't given the exact date yet, but sometime around the end of the summer, I will be releasing my latest book on race and identity in ancient Egypt, Volume 1, towards a meaning for the place named Kemet. So this is going to be my full blown out book size uh, analysis of the place named Kemet. So this is going to be, it's scheduled to be a 3-volume series. And the second volume is going to be an edited work. So it'll be other scholars contributing to the conversation and on the race and identity of the ancient Egyptians and the scholastic issues involved with um, that research question. And then in volume 3, it is going to be a shorter text, but it will be primarily dealing with um, the primary sources from other source material, ancient material, raw source material that'll be dealing with the identity of the ancient Egyptians. And so, it'll be a good reference work for those of you who are into this and want some primaries to debate these internet trolls. That will be in the works. So look for this volume 1 sometime towards the end of the summer, just right before the fall. And so, secondly and lastly, the One Africa Conference, Power and Unity Conference, that the creators of the film Hoppy, which I was, privileged to be a part of, is hosting. And, for those of you who know, we were scheduled to have this conference in Egypt in February, but due to some a great trolling campaign, the conference was postponed and then moved now to Detroit, Michigan, and it will be on Saturday, April the 30th, and Sunday, May the 1st. So it is going to be a wonderful lineup of scholars who are going to discuss the unity of Africa and what must be done and all of that. And these scholars are Mfudishi Jehuti Mess, Dr. Malefe Keti Asante, Dr. Susan Tata, if I'm saying that correctly, Dr. Theophile Obenga, our good brother Jabari Osaze, Dr. Chike Akua, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, and Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, Sister Baina Bello, and Dr. Milana Karanga, as well as myself. And so it is a powerful, powerful lineup. And so you can either go to the event if you want to make it to Detroit that weekend, or you can purchase the streaming service. So it will be streamed online. And so all you need to do is go to the hoppyfilm.com address, and there is an area on the home page that has this flyer or a variant of it, and you can click that and purchase either your ticket for the live in person event if you plan on being in Detroit, or you can purchase the online streaming tickets there. So I'm not sure how much the tickets are, but you can visit this link, hoppyfilm.com, and get yours today. So with that said, let me big up Sherry Jones is in the building. Zane Montego is in the building. Stephen McKenzie is in the building. Peace and blessings to you. Sister Safa and Kenny Anderson He says, "Greetings, good brother. A more factual, historical, development-based identity is critical. Will you address the new African identity regarding Black identity?" We can do all of that on tonight, and we have TILG841, the DB1 is in the building. Don't know what that means, but thank you for joining the conversation, and we will get it in. So, um, let me just get things started here and let you know about, what brought about this conversation. And so this is something that I address on the regular, just in more so personal conversations. But this has, for the most part, been years in the making. And so, a lot of us, of course, we come into this intellectual space, um, and whether through the university system or what we call the communiversity, and then there's another label called the conscious community. But a lot of us find ourselves one way or another identifying with Africa, African people, culture, language, philosophy, etc., etc. And so, when we enter this level of discourse and identity and the like, we have this habit of wanting to shun anything that appears to be associated with Europeans. And so, this on the extreme end, that's when you get those folks who believe that Black folks invented everything in the universe, and the Europeans, quote unquote, stole certain things from African culture. Or if they're not at that extreme, they just don't want to have anything to do with European people, at all. So but it's very selective in terms of how they navigate that particular space. So um with that being said, when it comes to Black Greek lettered organizations and people who are members, there tends to be this tendency to attack the the idea that one can be African and be a part of the Black Greek lettered organizations. And one of the many charges against the organizations and the people, of course, that belong to it is that these the people who join them are trying to be Greek. That's the main thing. And so they believe that, by joining the organizations, that one is consciously, in essence, ultimately, without trying to say it, wanting to be white. And it is the furthest thing from the truth that anybody, could fathom. And, just from the onset, outside of the Greek letters themselves, that is essentially the only thing that you can consider Greek as regards to the so-called Black Greek organizations. That's why no one ever, I have yet in my 20 years being involved um, in such organizations found anyone to identify themselves with being Greek. And so when you say identify, when you're talking about an identity, this is the assumption that this person is, claiming this as their ethnicity, um, and that, they go so far as to learn the language in terms of dress, in terms of philosophy, in terms of behavior, in terms of values and morals. Like it is not even that serious. So like this is some of the things that we're going to be addressing here today. And so let me do this here. Just switch. Oop, let me, got too many windows open. And there we go. And so let me change the dynamic of the screen. So, of course, I have my trusty PowerPoint presentation ready, because that's just how we do here in these Mbongi streets. And so, I'll try. I got two windows open, so I'll try my best to pay attention to the chat. But if I don't acknowledge or recognize a comment, please charge it to my head and not my heart, as the saying goes. So let me. And he says this is Detroit lingo. All right, my bad. And it'll be my first time in Detroit. Technically, I've been there before, but I never left the airport because I had a layover. So I don't know if that counts as going to Detroit. So as I've said, when I go, I'm gonna try to go to Jay Dilla's old basement and see if they will allow me to get a Dilla beat, and so I can rhyme and cause all kinds of havoc in these internet streets. So thank each and every one of you who is just joining the conversation. And it's about to go down now. So let me try to navigate this. Alrighty. So so the question here is, do Black Greeks have an identity crisis? And the question is no. Not at least in association with joining Black Greek lettered organizations. And people need to get this straight. So when we talk about being part of the organization, notice the language that we say. We say Black Greek lettered organizations. No one ever says Black Greeks or that we're Greeks in terms of identifying with Greek people in Greek history. And so when people think of the Black Greeks who are not kind of privy to this history, they think that we're walking around in togas and having toga parties and identifying and wearing the dress, and that we have the values of these particular types of groups, and that we just do what so-called Greek people do, and that's just not the case at all. We don't even get the privilege of being the Spartans, kicking everybody's asses. They don't even think about it in these terms. But when folks think of Greeks, this is what they think of. And then on a more extreme, some will identify the Greeks with the promotion of like homosexuality and things. So for some, on the most extremes, their idea is that one is trying to be or promote that particular lifestyle. And so so there's various different ways in which people have kind of presented this over the years. So I'm not addressing any one person or group in particular. Remember that this is just something that I've been hearing and dealing with over the years. And so I haven't addressed it I don't believe on my channel in a formal way. So this is what I'm doing here today. So For those who don't know, I am a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which was founded on December the 4th of 1906 in Ithaca, New York, at Cornell University. And it was started by 7 men who were students at the university: Henry Arthur Callis, Charles Henry Chapman, Eugene Kinkle Jones, George Biddle Kelly, Nathaniel Allison Murray, Robert Harold Ogle, and Vertner Woodson Tandy, who was an architect and actually designed the mansion for Madam C.J. Walker. And so, all of these outside of the fraternity have contributed to African American and just Black history uh, in unto themselves. And I recommend that you kind of look up these individuals just for historical sake, and you can see their images. It's not in the order in which I read it that you see here. So, like Henry Arthur Callis is here in the center. Vernon Wilson Tandy is all the way over here. Nathaniel Allison Murray is here, and George Biddle Kelly, Robert Harold Ogle, et cetera, et cetera. So, but these are the individuals who founded the fraternity. However, it started actually as a study group in 1905, and that's going to become very important here. And so, this is just one of what we call the Divine Nine, groups. For those who are not familiar with the Pan Hellenic group. And so, the first collegiate, fraternal organization is credited to Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And but after that, starting in 1908, is the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and then everybody else came after that. So there's also Delta Sigma Theta. I'm just going, so this is AKAs, or the Alpha Kappa Alphas, of course, Alpha Phi Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Zeta Phi Beta, Iota Phi Theta, Kappa Alpha Psi, Sigma Gamma Rho, Phi Beta Sigma, and Omega Psi Phi that you see here. And so this makes up the core of what we call the Divine Nine. There has since been other fraternal organizations and sorority organizations that have been created. Some are exclusive to certain fields of study, others, for like the band, etc. Some, now what is becoming more popular are Greek lettered Christian fraternities and sororities and the like. And so there's more than what you see here, but this is the core. These are the groups that we call collectively the Divine Nine. So when we mention these groups, these are the ones that usually come to mind. And again, these groups, were founded in various universities, and all very early, with the exception of Iota Phi Theta. They were kind of in the mid 20th century, but the rest of these, like the last was I think around 1914 or so. But all of these are early 20th century organizations, and this plays a critical role in understanding the foundations in which they were at, and why they were formed in the first place. And so, this is just a picture of modern folks. uh I forgot what university this is where I snatched this photo, but that's neither here nor there. You just see, different young men and women at college, representing their organizations. So, Kappas, if you see these signs, Iotas, over here, Delta Sigma Theta, Zeta Phi Beta. Here, of course, the Deltas in the center. I don't see the Bras though. Hopefully we ain't get kicked off the yard for hazing, but that's, neither here nor there as well. But, so this is just, some young African Americans, Africans, uh, who have joined these orgs on their college campus. And so, again, I am a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. This is a famous painting, which I forgot who painted it, but you notice. So these are the members, the founders of the fraternity. But you see this one gentleman who is walking out of the door here, and that is C.C. Poindexter, who was part of Alpha Phi Alpha when it was a study group, but he was opposed to it becoming a fraternal organization in 1905. And when the group voted to make it a fraternity in December of 1906, then he was a little older than most of these students at the time. He decided to leave, but we still consider him a founding member and respected for the organization, because he was there literally at the beginnings when it was a study group. So, of course, this is me. I was, we say spring. If he was in a spring, usually um, members are inducted either in the fall or the spring. And so the year that I joined was in the spring, but Black people, we can't pronounce words, so we say the spring. I'm a spring O2 and of the AMU chapter at the University of Houston. My line was called the Six Pharaohs of Triumph. And I don't know if you can see, these are my line brothers, and we call them LBs. If you ever hear anyone in the organization say my LBs, that is my line brothers. And so, the first one here, the number one, he was named Ramesses. And we don't pick our names. Our names are given to us when we were online. And so number one was Ramses. Number two, and we're ordered in height. I'm actually kind of crouching down a little bit here. I'm about the same height as number five over here, but I'm here in the center. So this is number two, which is they named him Seti the first, and then number three is Samson. And the reason why they call him Samson is because this is a brother of Jamaican descent, and he had long locks when we started the process, and we had to shave our heads at the end. And so he was very upset that he had to cut his locks as a result of the process. But you do what you got to do. Hair grows back, and you can see him in this photo starting the process of growing his hair back. He is currently a lawyer in Texas, and that's my boy right there. And then, of course, it's your brother, number four, Imhotep. So when you see the name Asarimhotep, the Imhotep part came. That is my line name. So that's just a little bit of history for those of you who do not know. And then number five, Akhenaten. For various different reasons. This is my link, as we say, Akhenaten, Nigerian of Nigerian descent, Igbo, and then this over here, the tail is Tutankhamun, or King Tut, we call him for short. He was the youngest, and he's from Barbados. And so, matter of fact, only on my line, in terms of just quote unquote regular Afro American descent, is myself and number two, Seti one, Imhotep and Seti one. So everyone else has either Caribbean, which is these three, and on the left, or Nigerian descent. The brother, they're first generations here in the United States. So we have a kind of an eclectic mix. So we're the six pharaohs of triumph. This is a rare photo because I'm always missing in photos. So uh so so this is a good rare picture of me. This is me at my probate on Ford. So this is how old this is. So for a lot of you who don't know, there was back in the day we did not have cell phones with cameras on it and being able to swivel. Back in the day, when you wanted to take a photo, you either had an expensive photo, I mean, camera, or you had one of those cheap disposable cameras. And so this was one of those disposable cameras, and so this was at night, so it's not really good lighting. But back in the day, when you took a photo either in your regular camera or from the disposable cameras, it was time stamped the date right there. So this is proof of of the time. So this was on April the 26th, 2002. And so I actually crossed over on the 17th of April. So on April 17th, I will be celebrating 20 years in the fraternity. So when I say that I've been hearing what we're about to discuss here for a long time, is 20 years, a long time. And so this is my ace, O'Neal, Ramses in the front here. This is Quran, the number tree. And I don't know where Dex is, but so we're stepping here. So yes, I used to step back in the day. And so uh this was on the yard at U of H. So just some photos. I don't even know if you can really kind of see too closely here. Me with my LBs some time later, and with the group there. So had some real good times. Of course, college days swiftly pass, and these become great memories. But we're here to address certain things here. So now we get to the topic of some things. And so again, the question is, us are people who join these organizations trying to be Greeks? And of course I already answered that, and it is a hell no. And it's a hell no for several different reasons. And uh and the main reason is that anybody who is uh, knowledgeable about these organizations should know that we operate differently than European based fraternal organizations. First and foremost, when Europeans join their fraternal organizations, it is something that is considered something that they do and did in college. And so very rarely outside of college does them belonging and quote unquote rushing to a college fraternity is does it have meaning. Whereas with the Black Greek lettered organizations, these are fraternities for life. These are relationships built for life, which is why we have a different entry process. And it has since become the whole pledging thing, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But uh it is it's just all around different. It's almost like, in a sense, that even though there's Christianity, right, and non-denominationalism and Catholicism and all that. Black church, the Black church experience is something that is totally different than what you would find in a European based Christianity. And more so the Christianity, even though that would be closer to the ideals and ideology of Europe and the Middle East, because it actually encompasses a value system. The For the Black Greek lettered organizations, it's not along those lines. And so um, and so we were started for very different reasons as well. And and so this is, Henry Arthur Callis, who in 1969 had mentioned, one of the reasons why the the organization was created in the first place. And so you often hear this rumor that Black Greek letter organizations were created because they wouldn't let us in the white fraternities. And that's not true at all. It is more so having to deal with the larger issues at hand in society. So one of our founders, Henry Arthur Callis, stated that society offered us narrowly circumscribed opportunity and no security. Out of our need, our fraternity brought social purpose and social action. So remember, this is 1906 when this organization started. And I'm dealing with primarily my organization of Alpha Phi Alpha in this discussion because I want to leave it up to, and maybe we can continue this conversation with others who know more about their organization. So I have surface knowledge of the inner workings and ideals of some of the other groups, but I don't want to speak on their behalf per se outside of the general things in which I know. So, but regardless, we always have to start at the beginning, and the beginning is with Alpha. So remember, this is 1906. So I don't know if you can really kind of fathom this in your head, but Henry Arthur Callis, George Biddle Kelly, et cetera, their parents and grandparents were enslaved here in this country. And so slavery ends in 1863, 1865. And these newly released enslaved Africans are now trying to make their way in this place and set themselves up to to thrive. And so remember, after slavery, there was this large fear that Africans were going to rise up and take over the country and basically do to them what they have done to us. So that sparks the birth of the Ku Klux Klan terrorist organization, as well as the enactment of Jim Crow laws and whatnot. So remember, Jim Crow lasted essentially 100 years. So they are existing, at the beginnings of Jim Crow, which we know did not end until the time of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X Black Panther Party going into the 70s. So keep all of that in mind when we're talking about the emergence of Black Greek lettered organizations. So on the college campuses, there were, so remember, we're just coming out of slavery. And at this time is this kind of boom of the development of Black schools. Because we're, remember that education and being able to read and all of that was illegal during slavery. So one of the first things that we wanted to do once we got out of slavery was to get educated. And so a few of us outside of our local education systems, the independent African academies is what we call them, some of us were able to go to the universities. And so, we know about, for example, in the late 1800s, W.B. Du Bois, being, the first graduated Yale University. And, um, and so, but, it was rare for Blacks to be in college. And for various different reasons, either financial and mainly because European people were trying and doing any and everything to force Blacks out of college. And so this is the motivating facts. This is when he talks about, we had these narrow opportunities and we had no security. So they can just say, well, we don't like this essay, we're kicking you out of the university, right? And so one solution in which they came up with was to create this support network in the form of a fraternity. It is designed to be, in essence, kind of a positive peer pressure group and resource group to help to keep Black men, um, and women in college, and for them to graduate so that they can be of help and of service to Black people once they get out. And so these are the reasons and why they're founded. They weren't founded to be like white folks. They were founded as a support network. So remember, this is Cornell University in upstate New York. The Kappas were founded on a predominantly white institution. Many of the other groups were founded at Howard, at a HBCU. But for the most part, these other early groups were founded in hostile collegiate environments. And so this has to be kept in mind when we're having these conversations about their founding and the hostilities that they faced, and what they were, this being one type of solution for that particular problem. And so, um, he goes on to say earlier in a earlier convention that we wanted more than a traditional American college fraternity. Our job ahead required a fellowship which would embrace those millions outside the talented tent. We realized that the leaders of any people emerge chiefly from the best trained and best oriented members of their group. So the idea was that we're going to create this organization that has a system in place to help the members bond better and to be able to have to those entry into the fraternity for those who weren't part of the quote unquote talented 10. So remember, at around this time, well, at least by 1950, when he's making this, he's having this conversation, there is another organization which we'll talk about later, Sigma Pi Phi, the so-called Boule. They were in existence, but they were a professional. You already had to graduate to be a part of that organization, and you had to be thriving and doing well in your community to be a part of that organization. So we needed something a bit better that more people can join, and that would be more visible in the community to be able to help in whatever ways in which they can. So that's why in part why the fraternal and sororital model was embraced by these early African Americans. And so I bring up now Dr. Charles H. Wesley, who was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, of course, and he was the 14th president. He wrote over 15 books. And outside of this conversation, independent of Alpha Phi Alpha Association, y'all need to be familiar with Dr. Charles H. Wesley, because he is one of those pioneering scholars, African American scholars that have written about African American history and people, that is well respected and well cited in these texts. So he's one of those individuals that you, if you just are a student of African American studies, Africana studies, Africology, you have to be familiar with him. And so not only did he write the history book of Alpha Phi Alpha, he also wrote the history book um, on the Prince Hall Masons, as well as he helped to write the and organize, at least, and help them organize the book for Omega Psi Phi, I believe. And and he wrote on the history of the Boule as well. And so, those are just one of his many 15 books. But outside of that, he is a powerful historian, and I recommend that y'all look him up, and that y'all, if y'all can find any of his books out there readily available, to get them so that you can understand. He's up there with Du Bois and others, right? So in one of the uh conventions that he was able to speak at, he said, uh or he was to write in a text, I should say, the following. And what I'm citing here, and let me just blow this up. What I'm citing here is from a book uh, written by the late Dr. James L. Conyers. And we'll talk more about him in just a little bit. And so uh, the text is called Charles H. Wesley, The Intellectual Tradition of a Black Historian. And in this text, he's citing Dr. Wesley, and he says, to the Alpha Phi Alpha Brotherhood, African history and civilization, the Sphinx and Ethiopian tradition bring new meanings, and these are interpreted with new significance to others. As Americans of European parentage point with pride to the ancestral history of their people, so Alpha Phi Alpha would have the Negroes. Remember, Negroes is just the language, the verbiage of the day. The blacks, African Americans, or Negroes, blacks of America, look with pride upon African civilization, with its kingdoms, its governments, and its laws, its social institutions, its buildings and roads, and its evidences of indigenous progress, unaffected as it was by outside influence. So he's telling the members of Alpha this, because this is part of the heritage of Alpha Phi Alpha. And we'll get into that, in more of that in just a sec. And so this sounds very familiar, because the late Shekan Tijoke, Dr. Shekan Tijoke, said the same thing in several of his texts. And so in his first text, he says, Egypt is to the rest of Black Africa what Greece and Rome are to the Western world. And so there's this encouragement amongst these fathers to look to African civilizations and to study African history and civilizations. And in a way that Europeans look at the Greeks and the Romans as the foundations for their Western world, us Africans need to be doing the same thing in when it comes to ancient Egypt, in particular, but African civilizations at large. And so this becomes important because this goes against the question of, are they trying to be Greeks? So at least when it comes to Alpha Phi Alpha, here's a little bit of information for those of you who don't know. And so you remember that one of the founders is Eugene Kinkle Jones, right? And this is James L Conyers, text again, same page. It says Eugene Kinkle Jones had studied Greek at Virginia University, where his father was a professor. So Eugene Kinkle Jones actually transferred from Virginia Union University to Cornell University. And so another founder, Henry Arthur Callis, wrote in a letter to the fraternity historian, I never studied Greek. E.K. Jones, that is Eugene Kinkle Jones, arrived at Cornell in September of 1906. I had trouble with the last letter alpha. So it is Henry Arthur Callis who came up with the three letters Alpha Phi Alpha. And he says that I had trouble with the last letter alpha because I could not find in Latin what the Greeks called Africans. He said, the professor of Greek whom I consulted told me Ethiopians. So came the second alpha. So I hope you get what is being said here. So for those who don't know, each letter in Alpha Phi Alpha is an acronym. And so alpha, the word meaning first, and phi for brother or brotherhood, and then Ethiopia. So the first brotherhood of the Ethiopians, of the Ethiopians. This is in 1906. And so when someone is making this argument, they're trying to be Greeks. No, at least for us, it's in our name. A Phi A, Alpha Phi Alpha, the first brotherhood of the Ethiopians. And so we have another issue here because when we talk about the, being Greeks or whatnot, we always say Greek lettered organization, never that we're trying to be Greeks. That's just not how we roll. The letters that we use to represent the organization is Greek, but it's not really Greek. These are a variation of an African script known as the hieroglyphs or the Sesh Meta, right? And so when we talk about alpha, for example, this comes from the ancient Egyptian word herep, which means the beginning, which means first. Also the cow head. And it's from the cow head that it came into the stylized for the Phoenician, I should say, into the Greek, into the Roman. So these are hieroglyphs. And this was known then and it is known now. That is from the Egyptian hieroglyphs that you get these letters. These are just stylized because, everybody, even the Egyptians themselves, had to reduce and simplify the sacred writings. Because when you see these big hieroglyphs like this, the pictured ones, those are mainly used on monuments. But when they write, like on papyrus or whatnot, they use the simplified script and the cursive demotic script. other script being hieratic. And so even when you're writing in so-called English, these are hieroglyphic letters. And so these are the classical Greek letters, but these will be the more classical Egyptian variation of the letters. And what you write in, like all of you who are in the chat right now, you're using the modern variant of the script. So no matter what you're using, these all trace back to Egypt, and you're writing with a modern variation of the quote unquote Greek script. So there are many different Black Greek lettered organizations outside of those who use the classical script versus those who use the modern script. So if you say NAACP or FOI for the Fruit of Islam, if you claim an RBG, right, for red, black, and green, or the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, or the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, these are all Greek letters. But there is no accusation with you trying to be Greeks, or you trying to be Romans, or you trying to be Hebrews. And so ultimately, it's a silly allegation from people who don't know history. If you write in this modern script, it's a Greek script. You're Greeks. None of y'all write in the Seshmet or Netcher. None of y'all write in Dombe or the Insabidi script. You write in this modern Greek script, which is just a modern ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic script. This is the hieroglyphs simplified. And when you make an acronym like NAACP or NAACP, because I know a lot of them hate the NAACP. So this is why we have to study history, and we don't make allegations for stuff that we don't know. And so now something else that I would always hear back in the day. And so what I want to address now is what I'm calling these false allegations levied against these fraternal and sorority organizations. And this again, it's always people who are not very historically savvy. And in modern conscious community fashion, in Amara Squad fashion, we would call them pseudos, because they don't want to do basic historical analysis. And so, and as a result, we get allegations as what we're going to do now. So, if y'all want to know any kind of history of where this modern conscious community emerged and why it's so different than at the time of when the likes of John Henry Clark, of John G. Jackson, of Marimba Ani, of Asa Hilliard and Dr. Ben, and all of those were going around teaching. It is because there was this new crop of religious and conspiracy theorists who were on the extremes who became popular and started running amok with information. And so, these people include Phil Valentine, Dr. York, um, who else? Bobby Hemmett. And this the ringleader at this time, rest in peace to the good brother. I believe he passed in 2012, is Steve Coakley. Now, if you ever watched any of the old Steve Coakley videos, he's the number one conspiracy theorist, in of black folks. He'll read a newspaper and then all of a sudden he has insights into all the Illuminati dealings and everything's boule and all this other kind of stuff. And when I came into the organization, you know, there was a tape going around with uh there was a tape going around with Steve Coakley, one of his lectures, and it's probably several of his lectures, where he was arguing that, well, it was several things that he would argue. And one of his major claims was that the Black Greek letter organizations and the Boule were created to undermine the efforts of Marcus Garvey's movement and the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And so there's a problem with this. And again, when this is something that we fight in the conscious community all the time, which is why I stress to you all, at least on this channel in the Mbongi, proper research methods so that we don't come out here looking like fools trying to make arguments around the world about stuff that is easily able to be checked and debunked, right? So he says that the Black Greek letter organizations and the Boule were created. Keep in mind, they were created. That means they were founded to undermine Marcus Garvey. There's a problem with that. Why? Let's do a little bit of history here. Marcus Garvey was born in 1887 in Jamaica. The Boule was founded in 1904. Alpha Phi Alpha, as a study group, was 1905, but the fraternity in 1906. Marcus Garvey would have been 17 years old at the time of the Boule's founding. So he would have been 17 years old and still in Jamaica at this time. So again, Alpha Phi Alpha was founded, the fraternity part of it was founded in 1906, which puts him at about age 19. Marcus Garvey's UNIA was not started until July of 1914. And Marcus Garvey doesn't step foot into the United States until 1916. So nobody in the United States outside of maybe Booker T. Washington, because I think he was mailing, sending letters. They were sending letters back and forth, and he came to the United States in 1916 to specifically to meet with Booker T. Washington. But Booker T. Washington died in 1915, so he never had a chance to meet him. So let's keep this in mind. So the claim is that the Black Greek lettered organizations and the Boule was created to undermine Marcus Garvey. But the Boule starts in 1904 and Alpha in 1906. And so Not many people, if any, were familiar with Marcus Garvey and the UNIA prior to him coming to the States. As I mentioned before, he had written correspondences with Booker T. Washington, whom he was scheduled to meet, but Washington died in the fall of 1915. So his aim when he came to the United States was to hook up with other progressive Black organizations to expand his agenda of the UNIA that he just created a few years prior. Here he met with hostility because of the complex color dynamics, which he encountered firsthand with meeting W.B. Du Bois in the NAACP. And so that's a little bit of history that is worthy of discussion. And so I recommend that y'all look up the history between Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, right? This fueled his thrust to simply start a branch of the UNIA in the States, which he did in New York, May of 1916, and some say 1918. So we'll assume that this is 1916, right? That he started this. So it becomes problematic when you realize that 6 of the Divine Nine organizations were already created and had chapters around the United States before he even steps foot in the United States for anybody to have known about him outside of Booker T. Washington. And so again, Alpha Phi Alpha 1906, the AKAs 1908, the Kappas in 1911, the Omegas in 1911, the Deltas in 1913, Phi Beta Sigma in 1914. So how are these organizations created to undermine? They didn't even know he existed at the time. He had no footing here in the United States. What he does doesn't thrive until the mid 1920s and 1930s. And the UNIA was very inspirational in terms of the development of, for example, the Nation of Islam and how they organized and came to be. But when it came to these Black Greek lettered organizations, there's no Garvey at this time. And so we always have to do basic history here. Steve Coakley was all over the place. And so the other charge against Black Greek lettered organizations is that they were founded by Sigma Pi Phi, which is the Boule. And I don't necessarily know if that is attributed to Steve Coakley, but this is just something that I have come across over the years, right? And so these are the founders of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity, right? Henry McNeil Milton, what is this? Algernon, B. Jackson, Edwin C. Turpin Howard, Richard Warwick Jr., Robert Jones, Eugene Theodore Henson, right? Now, for those who don't know about the organization, it was founded on the 15th of May, 1904, which and it was also called the Boule. This is where you get the Boule, which is a council of chiefs. It is the oldest continuously existing Greek letter postgraduate fraternity, originally founded by and primarily for eminent Black professional men and later similar professional men of African descent throughout the world. Its founders were 6 exceptional men, 4 medical doctors, 1 dentist, and 1 pharmacist, who at that time was a second-year medical school student. So this organization was founded for the for professional men to network and support each other. You had to already have graduated college, as I mentioned earlier, and been part of your profession to be invited to this organization. And they are a little bit more exclusive than the college fraternities and sororities. And so they're not really visible. You don't see people wearing jackets and and the like. They don't do that kind of stuff. So this is a professional organization. And again, they were founded in 1904, right? And so it's no different than today. What is it? What is the organization? Someone type it in the chat. For example, was it NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers. Like, remember, it is NSBE. NSBE is still a Greek lettered organization because they're using the modern Greek letters that we write with every day. And that is a professional organization, more narrow than Sigma Phi Pi, because their group only deals with and supports those who are engineers, Black folks who are engineers. And then you have professional organizations that deal exclusively with those who are medical doctors. Like I belong to those organizations that deal exclusively with Blacks in technology, right? And computer scientists. There are many professional groups that exist so that we can be resources to each other and provide lines of support and access to resources, information about funding, furthering education, the like, and to really kind of network and things. Every group in the world has those groups. And so when you listen to the Bobby Hemmitts and the Steve Coakleys and the like, they try to make it seem as if there's something wrong with these types of groups. Every group succeeds because the professionals come together and network and create specific organizations. If you go into any indigenous African society, it's the same thing. So if you are a priest of Ogun, for example, you belong to an exclusive fraternity of metallurgists. When you went into ancient Egypt, they had the same thing. So this is why it is silly. It's all of these conspiracy theories and things for any group that is exclusive that becomes problematic, and we have to every so often have to have these conversations to correct individuals who aren't a part of these things from thinking that first of all, that Black people even have the power to do any real damage here in the United States like their European counterparts. That's not why we came together. Remember, this is 1904. Their parents were slaves. And African people coming out of slavery created a whole host of self-help groups. Whether they were they're organizing with the Prince Hall Masonry, whether the secret societies that existed in West Africa became the insurance company groups, or the burial societies. And maybe we can get Sean any Herod to come here. This is stuff that you learn in African studies, African American studies, if you go to college and take these courses. But we created all kinds of self-help groups, and we gave them all kinds of names. That does not mean that they're trying to be Europeans. They're trying to help each other in the process. As the saying goes, teams win. Everybody that has in opposition to trying to be lone rangers out there in the world, there's little that you can get done that way. You have to be a part of a group. And this is something that a lot of us in the conscious community just don't get. You have to exist in community, and you have to operate and move in groups. Otherwise, you are going to be the victims of those who organize and have groups. And that's exactly the history of African Americans here in these United States and abroad in the rest of the diaspora. And so this becomes problematic when you're saying that they were founded by people of Sigma Phi Pi, the Black Greek lettered organizations. And so again, the Boule was founded in 1904 in Philadelphia. Alpha Phi Alpha was started in 1905 as the Study and Social Studies Club in Ithaca, New York. In 1906, it becomes a fraternal organization. And in 1907, the second chapter of the Boule was founded all the way in Chicago. In 1907, the second chapter of Alpha was founded at Howard University. And also that same year, a third chapter was founded at Virginia Union University. And so in 1908, the third chapter of the Boule was founded in Baltimore. Where did they have the time to go to Ithaca, New York, and found Alpha, for example? And they didn't even exist in these areas. And then go and invent an organization that is totally different in structure and purpose than themselves. Because again, the Sigma Phi Pi, you already had to graduate already and be in your profession. So the deltas and the sigmas and the alphas and the AKAs, they're on college universities. They're trying to keep Black folks in college and graduating so that when they leave, they can be of service, because Black people were not graduating in high rates. And so you needed a support network. And so a lot of us just don't seem to get and understand what a support network is. You know, even the most ruly of our society understand this. So when you talk about, for example, the gangs in LA, these group of young kids got together initially to defend themselves against the white hostility that existed in their neighborhoods. Unfortunately, they started turning on themselves, and then other gangs were formed, for example, the Bloods, because of the terrorism that the Crips were doing and the bullying that they were doing in the community. When in many respects, they were trying to, at least at first, be a group that would take up the slack of the Black Panthers after the COINTELPRO with the Black Panthers. You know, and I highly recommend the documentary film Bastards of the Party that goes into the details of the LA gangs emerging, and at the time when the Black Panthers had fallen off. And so there's history here, but they understand that, in order for us to survive here, we need to come together. And that's on the unruly side. So even for those of us who are professionals, we understand that trying to do stuff on your own, you will not get far. As the African proverb says, if you if you want to now I'm messing up. I don't even remember what it says. It's something to the nature. If you want to go far, um, if you want to, get there quick, go at it alone. If you want to go far, you go there together, right? And so I'm using the wrong button. So again, at what point did the Boule ever make it to Ithaca to found Alpha? At what point did the Boule in Philadelphia defy the laws of physics and found other organizations totally different in structure and purpose in less than a year time span? Why would the Boule need to create an organization so soon, a year later, before even creating their second chapter of their own organization? How is there a connection that these guys never even met? What's the connection? Are we saying that the Boule has magical powers that they can even found organizations and not even be there? Like we have to we have to think critically when we make these claims. And so there's those of us in the community, as many of you already know, that they just don't like to critically think. They love conspiracy theories and they just run off the top of the head and in their minds. And this is the stuff that we fight when we're fighting the pseudos in these internet streets. But pseudos love being pseudo, and there's nothing that we can do about that too much. So now the the idea that, again, that we're trying to be Greeks but don't understand the African and sacred motifs that we carry. Yeah, Zay says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So yeah, that's the quote. So um so now I'm just going to start listing some things, because when we say Greek in what way? Greek in what manner? In terms of thought, values, in terms of motifs, what makes these organizations Greek? And so, we've already established a few things. And so now I'm just going to get on, for example, some of the sacred motifs. Motifs are the aesthetics, the visuals that you see attached to any kind of group or population. And so, again, I'm primarily speaking about, Alpha, and other groups can tell you what their symbolisms mean if they, choose to do so. But first and foremost, one of our, major symbols is the Sphinx, or the Harem Akhet, or also known as, Hawe. Some people say Q, but either way it goes, when everybody sees the Sphinx on any kind of advertisement, they know that it is Alpha Phi Alpha. You don't get more African than the Harem Akhet or Sphinx. We even have a magazine called the Sphinx for the fraternity. And so that's why, for example, if we go all the way back to, it's really all the way back to Charles J. Swesling, when he says, to the Alpha Phi Alpha Brotherhood, African history and civilization, the Sphinx and Ethiopian tradition. Because remember, Alpha Phi Alpha is the first brotherhood of the Ethiopians. Right? So, these become part of the sacred emblems of the fraternity. And then, of course, the pyramids themselves. And then you'll see like an axe and a dove and a torch. These all have specific meanings for the fraternity. And I'm not sure necessarily that a torch, like a light or a lamp, is anything unique to Africa to call it an African iconography. But definitely, for example, the pyramids and the harem akhet. So for the fraternity, these are, two of the major symbols, official symbols of the fraternity itself. And so another issue that comes up is the idea of pledging. And, it should be stated that, the old school pledging, the old school way of pledging is no longer allowed in these organizations, you know, um, due to certain injuries and in most extreme cases, death or whatnot. But people think that the idea of pledging itself is not African. And I question the sanity of anyone who says otherwise, because I know for a fact that they have not been initiated in Africa in any indigenous system. Because when the pledging that we do here is considered light compared to what they do in Africa. And so you see this image here. This is from the movie School Days, and you see these individuals getting wooded, and so with the wooden paddle. And so you always hear people say, "I would never let somebody hit me," and for no quote unquote brotherhood and and the like. And I'm like, y'all don't know Africa really too well. Um, and what is the purpose of this, or what was the purpose of this for those who went through this at a time in which it was legal, right? And so this usually happens when they're doing recitations and trying to memorize information in history. There's a reason for this. It's not done arbitrarily, and it's done across the world. And so what people don't understand, for example, in ancient Egypt, we're fond of calling somebody a siba, right? Or sibau, which is a teacher or a tutor. They don't understand that that word sibau is in siba is also a word for chastisement and punishment and for training, right? But what I want y'all to pay attention to is the determinatives. And so the way that I'm using the screen now, you can't see my mouse, but if you pay attention, so look at the hieroglyphs, you're going to read them from left to right. So if we just go on the top row, right, we have the S hieroglyph, that's the first hieroglyph. Then we have the B, which is the foot hieroglyph. And then we have the star, which is actually Seba itself. And then we have the W, which is the quail chick. And then you have this image at the tail end, right? So you have a man who is holding a big wooden stick, right? It's not why is the word for teacher and tutor have as determinative the classifier a man holding a big ass stick, right? Why does the word for chastisement and punishment have the same man holding a big ass stick? Why does the very word for training still have the man with the big ass stick? Because even in ancient Egyptian times, they utilize the stick, the wood, not only in terms of punishment, but in terms of teaching, to keep in the memory, because we know for a fact that you remember stuff better when when there's great emotion involved in the issue, in the lesson. Because I could just teach you or tell you something, but if you remember the experience for which you had to learn the information, because it was traumatizing. You remember it better. And so when you see, for example, in the Islamic schools, and they have the young kids and people trying to memorize the Quran, when you mess up, you get hit with a stick. They got this from ancient Egypt, right? But there's another reason why you go through this hitting process, right? And a lot of the women may not understand this, but those of you who are military minded, who have been in the military, and those of you who practice martial arts and the like, you understand these things. And so, what slide I have here? Uh, this is from a text, the 19th dynasty, the Papyrus Anastasi, the fourth. This is just a citation, in terms of showing you that they would they would they believed in capital punishment, I should say, right? So it says, a stupid son badly reared by his father is a statue of stone. A son who remembers what he is taught and has strong desire to learn has a splendid destiny. His character will help bring blessings upon him. Where the learner's attitude is hostile, no instruction can succeed. He who heeds a first reproach is spared a second. If a child's character is wanting, it is because he is disobedient. Now, for the ancient Egyptians, they say that Thoth, or Jehuti, the great god of writing and education and science, gave the earth the whip to help educate fools. A child who steers clear of scandal will never be hit a regrettable blow. No child dies from a beating given by his father. So part of this educational process, even in ancient Kemet. Now, y'all talk about pyramids, and they were the founders of math and science, and they influenced the world. You know why? Because they were getting their ass beat if they didn't get this information right. Now, I'm not making the argument that they either right or wrong. I'm just the messenger. I'm just giving historical analysis here, right? So, excuse me while I take a drink. All right, coming back. So, I have no value judgment on it. So, as I mentioned earlier, those of you who are in the martial arts, there's a second component of this process that helps you to understand some things. So, I'm dating my age here. And so those, some of you younger folks may not remember this movie called Bloodsport, right? And it starred Jean-Claude Van Damme. It was supposed to be based upon a true story of Frank Dukes, who allegedly was a part of this underground fighting, Kumite system or whatnot. And so there's been some controversy about, that character in real life and saying that he made up that story, but that's neither here nor there, right? But there's a scene in the movie where Jean-Claude Van Damme, playing the real life character of Frank Dukes, is being trained by his shidoshi, his martial arts teacher that taught him ninjutsu and the like, right? And in the scenes, you see the master teacher, the in the black here, he has these bamboo sticks in his hand. And while I'm saying Jean, yeah, I'm about to say Jean-Claude and Bowling. the Frank Dukes, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the person playing him, while he's doing his katas and poses or whatnot, he is simultaneously being hit in the legs, in the stomach, in the chest, in the arms, in the back, um, simultaneously at the same time being beat. And the purpose of him being beat at this time is not to punish him for some arbitrary reason. The the It is to help him with his focus. And so the reason why you do this, and matter of fact, even Snick used to do something similar. So y'all think that our elders and our ancestors would just go into the streets and march without having any kind of training whatsoever. You know, it is to put you in a zen, to get you to a place that no matter what is going on around you, that you are able to focus on your goals and you don't let pain stop you from reaching your goals. So this is the lesson that is being learned. Again, the women, is going to be hard for y'all to fathom this, you know, but for the men understand this, right? And so when in the pledging process, it is no different than what you would find amongst men everywhere else. So it's not simply punishment for punishment's sake. There's no punish all the time. It's not even about punishment. It's about your ability to stay focused even when you are being attacked, and for you not to lose, for you not to be out of character. And so people often wonder why I'm able to take the kinds of attacks and slanders and things of this nature in these internet streets, and even threats sometimes, without even being bothered by these people. My martial arts training and pledging, helped in that process, because there's nothing that you can do, no threat or harm, that would stop me from reaching my goals. And you have to be trained. It's a mindset. There's a difference between um, those who go through processes like this and then others who don't. Because people who don't go through similar type of processes, whether organized or unorganized in real life, these are the kinds of people who always make excuses for their shortcomings, who always get sidetracked, right? They're easily swayed. They're always in arguments everywhere. In their relationships, they're real sensitive. Like, these are the people who you can tell ain't been through nothing in life. And so, every Greek lettered person who pledges a Black Greek lettered organization has to learn this poem, Invictus by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be for my unconquerable. So I know this poem in and out. Why? Because of the pledging process. You know, you memorize that stuff, but you don't realize how these words that you learn through your initiation help you later on in life when you are faced with those challenges. And when we go to the second stanza of this particular poem, it says, "In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud, right? The environment is very challenging, maybe even at the brink of death, but I'm showing no signs of being deterred. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Like you can throw whatever at me. I still move with my head up, and I'm going to uh accomplish what I came here to accomplish. It's a mindset. That's why there's just certain people, like there's basketball players, and then there's people like Kobe, right? Who put in the work, who goes through the pains and suffers. See, this is what people don't realize, that your 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 dreams are on the other side of your comfort zone. And the pledging process helps you to learn how not to fear pain, loss, and failure. And it's too many of us, and this is what indigenous African initiations taught you. That's why you went through those pains and dramas, so that you will learn not to fear death, that you can conquer death. That's why you have these symbolic death and resurrections in all of these initiations, because the process that you go through, you are near the brink of death, but you find it in you to keep going and to cross that finish line, to cross those burning sands. And these are just life lessons, right? And so, I have a photo up here of David Goggins. And for those who don't know about David Goggins, matter of fact, let me just reduce the window here because I want to highlight his book. I don't even know if you can see it. The light may be too bright, but it is Can't Hurt Me, right? David Goggins. And so it's a text, a bestseller text, master your mind and defy the odds. And so David Goggins is a former Navy SEAL. You can see him in his Navy SEAL attire on the cover, but on the book, on the page right now, you see him in one of the advertisements doing I guess a simulation of a mission. And so if you know anything about the SEALs and SEAL training is the most difficult training, special forces training in the United States military, right? And there are equivalents in similar armies, whether you in the United Kingdom, or whether for Russia or for China. But for us, the top tier of soldiers come out of the Navy SEALs, and they go through a rigorous pledging process that is like no other. And so people don't understand the mindset of someone like a David Goggins, who, after since retiring from the Navy SEALs, and he passed, you got to understand that this person has failed the Navy SEALs training, I think not once but twice. And his third go round, he made it. And he did all of this with a hole in his heart. He wasn't even supposed to make it. And now he's doing, He holds a record for the most pull-ups. And he runs 100-mile marathons, right? He not only was a Navy SEAL, he was also a Ranger. So he completed Ranger school in the military and was a paratrooper, right? And he's kind of revered around the world and is the real thing. And I study him because I want to duplicate this mentality. Not only just him as an individual, I'm talking about Navy SEAL mentality in the Afrocentric community, right? Because we have too many people who just make excuses about everything and is lazy and don't want to build, and it's hard to find individuals who are committed to achieving certain goals. And that's because in this community you have people who are afraid to pledge. When you join the Nation of Islam and you become a fruit of Islam, you pledge because they have a common goal and they need people who are committed. And the way that they select for these particular groups is that they have to weed out people and they have to create a brotherhood. That's the same reason why the SEALs training is so rigorous. You have to create a brotherhood, and it only comes through the shared triumph over adversity. And so those people who couldn't make it for whatever reason in their mind, they didn't have the mentality at the most extreme in terms of injury or death. But these are the kinds of people that you need on your team. And it's always those who are not as committed to a particular cause and to training and don't want to join brotherhoods are the main ones who complain about everything and think that people are trying to be elitist and that certain organizations and everything should be open to everyone. Your enemy in their armies, they train the best. They only accept the best. But we think that we should just accept everybody, and we wondering why we have the kind of chaos that we have, for example, in the conscious community. Because you don't have people who pledge, for a lack of a better term, and don't have the mentality of success, and that no matter what, nothing's going to stop us from achieving our goals, no matter how large the enemy looks. You need this type of training. And so this is a quote from David Goggins. And remember that he used to be like over 300 pounds, a fat, chubby dude. And now you be lucky to find 0.5% body fat on this brother. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but he's come a long way. And so he's like 45 years old, still running 100-mile marathons, right? So he's a little older than me. No matter the surgeries, everything. I for those who don't know, I encourage you to listen to his stories. If you ain't motivated to be better after hearing about his stories, I just wish that he was an African-centered brother. He's not, but regardless, you're able to forget the messenger and get the message. Learn from his life. So even in the film The Kingsman, like you see the main character, I'll blow it up so that y'all can see it. You see that they put their cadets or initiates through these life threatening situations because they're trying to select the best. And this is something I just want to drill in our heads. that you want the best always. And the only way that you can find the best is this: if you put them through extremes, hardships. So this is how you determine the people who want it, who will be committed, and then you can move on from there. Because this work isn't for everybody. And if you uh put your hopes on people, who aren't committed in a very serious way, then progress is halted. So that's just something to consider. So another characteristic that you find in Africa is after the initiation, after the hardship, after we've established, all of this, is the shaving of the head. And I think this is kind of more common around the world. But you find this in Africa after the initiation. So on the left hand side, you see the Maasai. When the young people, the young males especially, are after initiation and coming into their rights for adulthood, they shave their heads, and then they put this red ochre on the heads, right? And then you see on the right hand side, the out in South Africa amongst the Xhosa people, a young initiate, and you see the him in the white face. They're getting ready to start the process of shaving his head. And so the shaving of the head after initiation is part of the common African rituals. And so it is no different when you see brothers who have pledged, and they're coming out. So this is an example of an alpha probate. And you can tell on their head they are freshly shaven, right? And even when you saw one of my pictures, you saw that my head was shaved, right? And so here's another photo of some new recruits and fully shaven, because it is symbolic of starting anew, right? And so this is just as a common African thing. And so, of course, when you go to Africa and you are initiated into these different spiritual and educational systems, each group has their own sacred dances. And so anybody who has been to college and has been to a Greek party, or a Black Greek led organization party, you know that the fraternities and sororities, they have their own unique dances that is exclusive to them. And you will be in trouble if you are not a part of the organization you're trying to do their dances. It would be the same on the continent of Africa, right? And so the example that I'm just showing here is from uh, a comparison of, these are my frat brothers from my chapter. And matter of fact, you met my LB in the back earlier, number 5, Akhenaten. And this is BC and Wakalime. I think fall of 1995, Ada Mu. And so this is a homecoming at U of H. And the bros have a tent. You can see Ada Mu in the back right here. And we are hopping, and you see, people with their camera phones out. And it's the same that you see over here on the right with the Dogon, right? When you see the Dogon doing their Siggy ceremony, is certain people who are initiated into that guild, who go around and hop, and they have their own sacred dances. This is just what Black people do. You don't find this amongst, so-called white Greek lettered organizations. And we continue these traditions. And so, another issue that is charged is the whole branding and tattoos, right, of the organization. Now, branding is done by every group, well, every male group, the fraternities at least. But it's rare that I see it amongst alphas, but you see it a lot amongst omegas. And so this football player, I don't know who this is, play for the Saints. Maybe one of y'all recognize him and can put his name in the chat. But he's an omega. You can see the brands there. But this idea of branding and scarification with the sacred emblems of your fraternity as this is not African is a bunch of BS. And I wonder, do these people even study Africa? Because that's all you find in indigenous Africa is these scarifications and brandings and cuttings of the sacred symbols of the schools of thought that they belong to. It represents a commitment to an ideal. You have scarifications of the face and the like. This is all over traditional Africa. So it's not going to be any different when we do, because we keep some of these rights here in the United States and abroad, for which these chapters are. So when you're saying it is not African and they're trying to be Greeks, where? Show me where this is the case. And so, lastly, I just wanted to show some prominent members of the Afrocentric community that that are members of Alpha Phi Alpha. So, for example, y'all may know of the late Dr. Jacob Carruthers Makheru, who was the founder of the Kemetic Institute out in Chicago, for which brought us the likes of Dr. Raketi Amin and of course Dr. Greg Carr, who is also on the right. So both of these are members of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And so because Dr. Jacob Carruthers has passed, we say that he is now a part of the Omega chapter. So we have our individual chapters, the collegiate chapters, and then we have the Lambda chapters, which are the graduate chapters, and then we have the Omega chapter, which is exclusively to those members who became ancestors, right? So Dr. Jacob Carruthers is in the Omega chapter. And Dr. Mario Beatty also, and so these are prominent people involved in ASCAC and was at the beginnings of the ASCAC organization, right? Dick Gregory, for example, also a member of Alpha. Paul Robeson, also a member of Africa. And I have him here specifically. He's also both Dick Gregory and Paul Robeson Ma'akeru are, in what we call the Omega chapter that I mentioned earlier. They of course have passed. But, Paul Robeson sticks out in many ways. Of course, we already know that, Dick Gregory, with all his craziness and his conspiracy theory behind too, he's contributed to a lot of the conscious community miseducation. But that's neither here nor there. But he was about Black people, and he's about Africa and being associated with Africa. And it's the same thing with Paul Robeson. And so he states in this quote, "In my music, in my plays, my films, I want to always carry this central idea, and that is to be African." Right. And so we already saw some of those quotations from even the founders talking about the association and being with Africa, being associated with Africa. And so Tony Brown's journal, or Tony Brown of Tony Brown's journal. Now, a lot of you may not, know this or remember or know this name. He's also has passed away. And but in the late 80s and the early 90s, there wasn't many black spaces that would interview and uh and highlight black scholars and black issues in a very uh in a very real way. And so, I forgot the other brother's name. Was it Lesterville Jones? Something I forgot. I don't know if he belonged to any organization or not, but one of those two groups, one of those two interviewing platforms was Tony Brown's journal. And so a lot of us got hip to Dr. Benz, the Leonard Jeffries, the Asa Hilliards, and the like from Tony Brown and Tony Brown's journal. And so I pattern my, platform when I do my interviews and the like from brother Tony Brown. And so, I always wonder, how did we come from the type of journalism from Tony Brown and highlighting these prominent black scholars to what we see online in the conscious communities and the debates and the craziness that we see here today? When you look at Lester Vilt's, interviews, and you look at Tony Brown's interviews and their shows, and then you look at what we have today, it is no comparison. It is an extreme contrast, and it's a shame, actually. And so, what we're missing is the integrity of these elder programs. And I hope to bring about, the continuation of like a Tony Brown's journal. And so, we have like Dr. Malachi Crawford. And of course, y'all know Brother Jabari Osaze. And so Dr. Malachi Crawford, I hope to have on very soon, and just kind of pre-introducing y'all to him. Does a lot of good work on the Nation of Islam. He taught at the University of Houston when I was there. He was working on his PhD then. And Brother Jabari is working on his PhD now, I believe. And so, there's a lot of us, and 9 times out of 10, if in the conscious community, if you're in the academic community, and when you're trying to learn about Africa, if they are in a Black Greek letter organization and they are males, 9 times out of 10 they're going to be alphas. I can almost guarantee you that. And some of y'all should be familiar with Brother Asarimhotep. I've had him on the program before, and he's one of the people who I've known for over 20 years. And he's kind of convinced me, because when I first got to college, I was a Hebrew Israelite. And through life events that changed, and I started becoming more African centered. And so, like many of you and people who were just in our community at large, I did not look at the Black Greeks as something prominent. I'm thinking that they're anti-African and all this other kind of stuff. And when I got to know the individuals and started to learn more about the organizations, this stuff kind of changed. And he was one of the individuals who facilitated in that process. And so the chapter for which he belonged to, the Mu chapter, they were more African centered and oriented than a lot of groups that I've seen at the time in the mid to late 90s. And They were the same group of brothers. If you ever heard me tell this story about, they got kicked off the yard for hazing, but they didn't stop the programming. All the brothers created new Black Afrocentric organizations, just to keep the programming going, because we didn't have Black studies at Southwest Texas State University. And so it is so he's one, those influential individuals. I hope to have him back on the program soon. And so I'll be interviewing this brother. I didn't put his name here, but this is um, Dr. Paul Easterling, and he was also at U of H when I was there, and he is now part of. He's going to be creating, or they have created already, this online university, and it's an African-centered online university based out of the United States, but has a lot of teachers, of course, from Africa. And they're about to launch and do some very great things. And so, so just keep that name in mind, and I'll let you know when the interview comes here. And then lastly, we have on the right hand side here, a very influential and studious member of Alpha, but also, in terms of history, this is Dr. James L. Conyers. Again, Mark Heru, he died about, I think, in 2020, and at the beginning of 2020, of January 2020, or was it 2021? No, it was in 2020. So yeah, January 2020, he passed. And he came in and took over the African American Studies program at U of H when Dr. Jelani Williams, who was over our organization that I created on the campus called Umoja, he was a Kappa, to be exact. And the he helped it to grow and solidify itself. And of course, y'all should know Brother Sunjeti up here in the center, and then this is me over here on the left hand side. We are at the Shekant Diop conference. I forgot what year this is, but look up the works of Dr. James L. Conyers. He is very important in the field of Africana studies and Africology. And he has a lot of books. It's I think it's like 55 books that he has written and or edited, and very important texts on method, on research methods, on just after, like his latest book before he passed was on Africology, that was published in 2019. He has a book on John Henry Clark. He has a book on Charles H. Wesley that I cited from earlier in the program. And he's just a very important and very influential individual. And I'm just showing these names, and these are just men of Alpha. There's other, when we talk about Dr. Asa Hilliard, who was an Omega, when we're talking about Khalid Muhammad, who was an Omega, right? Huey P. Newton, who was a Sigma. There's this idea that being a part of a Black Greek letter organization somehow makes you anti-African is far from the truth. When the rites and rituals, the symbols, the very nature of these organizations follow the African milieu and follow the African structure. You're using an African script to represent the language, represent the organizations, and these folks are, have a care concern with Black African people. Now, people think that everyone in the organization should be just African centered and gun ho. While that is an ideal, that is unrealistic. And some people believe that they should be in the same way, like to be thought of like in a religious organizational sense. And that's not what a fraternity or sorority is here in on a collegiate level, because the only requirement is that you believe in God, right? Now, if you don't believe in God at some later point in your life, that's neither here nor there. But in the initial stages, That's the only religious requirement, is that you believe in God. It doesn't matter. So you'll find Muslims in these Greek letter organizations, Christians, people who espouse to, you know, maybe some Hindu or something like that, or some Native American, whatever. You find all different types, and of course, people who are African centered, and you know, and in Ifa or in Ghanaian traditions, and you have people, continental Africans, who are in these same systems, who come and join these organizations. And so it's a wide variety of people. They just come together to help, you know, develop, make a better development of men, and that you have a support network for when you're doing your own personal uh when you're completing your own destiny, that you have a support network to help you facilitate that process. That's one of the purposes of these organizations. They're not here to save Black people in the sense that, you know, we're supposed to help us as a collective become wealthy or establish hospitals and the like. That would be nice, and in some instances those things have happened, but that's not the purpose. People think that, you know, 501c3 type organizations here in the United States is supposed to have the same effect that a government would have. Like, a lot of the stuff that African people need in the United States, you need a government and governmental body. You need to be able to collect taxes to develop your school systems, and to build roads, and subsidize and housing and farming and stuff like that. You need a government. That's a totally different issue and process. And so, you know, with that, I end my discussion. And so now I will look at any kind of comments. And wow, those 160 something. So of course, I am not going to be able to go through all of that. And I saw earlier the donation given by our good brother Conan Lee, and I just want to say thank you. And for those of you that want to continue to support, you know, you can do so. And we are still raising funds for the film. And so with that said,
you see, I have a lot of things that's on my mind, and I would like to let them out. Look, I see reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart? I don't do the things that I used to. I'll be fine even if I lose you. Okay, yeah. Okay.
and we are back. And wrong button. Let me remove that. And so make sure that you visit the website, chianaintofilm.com. And to learn more about the film, we are still shooting. And remember, I was supposed to take some preliminary images and shots for the film in February, when we was going to Egypt, but that got derailed momentarily, you know, so we rescheduled, but I won't be telling what the date is that we rescheduled for. And so y'all know when we come back, you know, that we actually been there. And so, but you know, so we're kind of close to our goal. I think we've raised 4,000 of the 5,000 that was needed. And so we still got a good 1,000 to go. So any and all contributions help tremendously. And so you can go to chianaintofilm.com and make a donation, or of course you can support by any one of the methods that are scrolling at the bottom. So now let me look here. It says, he says, W.B. Du Bois, the great traitor to the Pan-African world. That's debatable because, you know, you wouldn't have Pan-Africanism without W.B. Du Bois. And so, let me see. I saw something over here. He says, it's D9 members that have non-African spouses. So what? You're not going to get everybody on the strictest black, you know, pro-blackness. It's just not going to happen. Again, you have a body of people that have diverse backgrounds, and that's just what they do. And so, for example, would you get rid of Sheikh Anta Diop? Because he was married to a white woman and had children. But, you know, everyone still bigs up Sheikh Anta Diop and Kwame Nkrumah and, you know, other folks. And so, you know, there's reasons for on the African continent, and that's a subject for another day. But, you know, y'all making unrealistic claims, and some of this stuff isn't just it's just unfeasible. Let me see. And appreciate it again, brother Conan Lee. And thank you, Sister Tamika, for reminding folks to big up the video and to share the video with friends and family. And let me see. He says accomplishing is, there may be two parts to. Let me scroll up a little bit. He says, to me, the Divine Nine going to the Pan-Hellenic directly implies they are under the umbrella of Hellenism. That makes their goal enticing for Black people to join them, but ultimately they are accomplishing the same Greek mission. That doesn't make any sense, because it has nothing to do, like these organizations are independent of white people, period. There's no umbrella, there's no white people over these organizations, and that's something that y'all just got to get in your head. Sonetta in the building says, stop playing, I need you on the House of Consciousness hit squad. We'll talk. So peace and blessings to brother Sonetta in the building. And so I don't know what this Hellenism is, because again, nobody's trying to be Greeks. Let me see. My main question is, why do all of the Divine Nine Black Greek letter organizations attend a conference with the Greek letter orgs called the Pan-Hellenic? All Pan-Hellenic means is just like Pan-African. It's just all, you do know the word Greek. They didn't call themselves Greek. They called themselves Hellenes. And so when you could say Greek or Hellen, it could be Pan-Greek, Pan-Hellenic. It's because that's just what the nature of the letters of the org. That's it. Has nothing to do with white people. I don't know where y'all getting this stuff from. And no matter how many times I say it, y'all just going to get that in your head. He says, Dr. Khalid Abdul was a member of Omega Psi Phi, and he left to create the new Black Panther. He didn't leave. You can't leave Omega. You are an Omega till you die. And even after you die, you're still an Omega. So, you know, and never once did he denounce the organization. Let me see. We are missing the pursuit of excellence in many areas of professional disciplines. Exactly. And that's all these organizations are doing. They're promoting and trying to promote excellence. And I've never, you know, until recently, especially in this conscious community, seen this backlash against being excellent in all areas of life for Black folks. And that's kind of the difference between our elders in the earliest centuries, regardless if they weren't the most Afrocentric in terms of perspective. Afrocentricity as a concept wasn't even developed in terms of a theory, wasn't even in existence at these times. but they had this sense of no matter what, wanting to be excellent and professional in things. And nowadays it's just anything goes. It's this street keep it real mentality, and we wondering why we're not progressing anywhere. And so I'm just scrolling. Everything says my scars are from fights with dudes with ratchet knives. I guess that's from the part of the discussion with the brands or whatnot. Now I don't have any tattoos or brands. Period. You know what I'm saying? And so Shakespeare says Boule created before Garvey. They did undermine Booker T. Washington. How? That doesn't make any sense. They were all for exactly what Booker T. Washington was for. And so when you say this, you have to name names, you have to give examples. And this is from just a scholarly perspective. So notice when I gave my presentation, I gave names, I gave times, dates, and the like. I didn't make a blanket statement because you don't know who's in the boule, like who in the boule, and when, and what evidence do you have? And so this is not me taking up. I'm not in boule, but this is not me taking up for the boule or Sigma Phi Phi, but it's just good scholarship. Like you have to name names, and this is an example of the excellence and that is to be expected from us. So I expect excellence from anyone who follows me on this program or who engages with me. That's the expectation. And so the excellence requires you to name names. That's just good scholarship. And so Christopher Thomas says that BGLO, divine I represents the Kemetic you need. Most don't know this information. I don't know if there's any correlation whatsoever with the need, because the need are primal forces of nature. And so it's just that's a totally different conversation in of itself. And so, we're trying too hard. We're making we're making these organizations more than what they are. And that's the problem. And so I'll just, because it's too much, let me see what's going on here. He says, I know what I need to know. I see what I need to see. I love you, brother, but you're not fooling me. Not anymore. You can believe what you want. I'm not in the business. I'm not a Christian. So I'm not trying to convert you to anything. And so, you can believe what you believe. You'll be wrong, and you'll be wrong for the rest of your life. And I will go to bed sleeping well and good, not worried about whether you get it or not. And that's just the way it is. And so, it is a lot of this stuff is just basic history. And people just want to, this community is full of people who just believe pseudo information. And I've come to the conclusion and the realization that you just can't save everybody. And so on this point, you just can't be saved. And so I don't lose any love for you. It just is what it is. One day you will, if you are a true student of truth, you'll be able to see what it is. And so I'm not saying that there are members. So you have to understand that there's a difference between the focus of an organization versus the attitudes and behaviors of certain individual members of an organization. And sometimes the attitudes and behaviors and values of certain members doesn't always correlate with the mission and the purpose of the organizations. And you're going to get that regardless. If I judged the conscious community based on the behaviors, for example, of Sarah Sutanseti, of Chief X, of what's that other brother's name? Young Pharaoh, and Brother Polite, if I was to judge each and every one of y'all based on those individuals alone, I would be out of order. I would be out of pocket because they don't represent everyone. And that is not, obviously, whatever kinds of behaviors that they exhibit, that's not representative of African-centered thought and consciousness. But they are still a part of the community. And you have to accept the good with the bad. And so no matter where you go, whether you in a Black Greek lettered organization, whether you in NAACP, whether you in the church, whether you in the mosque, it's always individuals who don't represent the ideals of these organizations. This is why education is very important, and why y'all need to be more realistic in your expectations and understanding of history in things. And some of y'all act like, that everyone is right and exact. But if I was to ask each one of you what organizations you belong to and what effective, like what are the organizations that you belong to that gets everything right and everybody is adhering to the most ideal in terms of values and behavior, who is that organization, and what is their work and what is their impact on the community? That's my question to anybody in the audience. Who's that person? Who's that representative? Who's that organization? And what is their impact on the community? He says, I'm still wondering why the European nomenclature. It's not a European nomenclature. It's an African nomenclature because these are, in fact, African scripts. And that was discussed at the beginning. And so if like your name right now is Ankoma the Jed, you're writing it with a Greek script. And so I can ask you, why the European nomenclature? It wouldn't make any sense. There needs to be slightly more evolution in terms of intellectual decolonization as it relates to Black Greeks. No, that's Black people as a whole. There's levels to this. And so if I was to just have the conversation with just Black folks in the conscious community, like there's levels. Like the stuff, there's like stuff that people believe that is not grounded in facts. They can be pro-Black and still be just pseudo in their information because they have not matured intellectually and historically regarding information. And this is one of the things that we try to help folks with. Y'all still believe in myths. And y'all believe, for example, that you in African clothing and stuff, and all these clothes come from India. You wearing Indian type clothes, calling it African, and not understanding the realization of how influence and borrowings and things work. He says, where is the collaboration between the D9 and Pan-African organizations? It seems like the D9 keeps themselves separated from the rest of us. It seems like what you what you experience in your personal life does not reflect reality. Because again, these organizations partner with various different organizations, and the people partner with every. Matter of fact, I can guarantee you that in those Pan-African organizations, you're going to find D9 members. He said the D9 and Du Bois supported social. The D9 doesn't support any political. This is one thing you got to get. It's not religious and it's not a political organization. They have no stance on any politics or religion. So you're making that up. And whether Du Bois was a socialist or Marxist, that's neither here nor there. That's what they had to work with back then. You don't have a whole bunch of scholarship on indigenous African systems of thought. And not everything about socialists or Marxists is bad. Y'all don't, most people haven't even read socialist or Marxist thought and got opinions on them. This is why I recommend that y'all study the works of University of Kemet Press by Dr. Taka Kilimanjaro and Yara Neb and others who have contributed to their series of books on this. He speaks about this. I can tell when people haven't read stuff. Y'all get hype over buzzwords. And so peace and blessings. Thank you to Sister Sylvia Stewart for the donation. It is greatly appreciated. And Jody Sanford, do Masonry have any dealings with Black Greeks? No, not in a formal sense. You got to understand that being a part of a Black Greek letter organization does not bar you from being a part of any other professional organization. It's not a gang. You know, the only you can't be like, how should I say? If I'm a member of Alpha, I cannot join Kappa Alpha Psi, right? I cannot join the Sigmas or the Omegas. So that restriction is there. But if I was part of a band fraternity, I can still join Alpha or any of these other groups because they're not considered in the same vein. They're a different, type of guild and organization. And so it would not stop me from joining the Masons. It would not stop me from joining you. So you have members who are Masons who are in Black Greek letter organizations. And then when they graduate, some of them may become Sigma Pi Phi in terms of Boule, if they like, or they can abandon. Because again, it's not that type of thing. These are professional organizations. And so these are collegiate. So you have grad chapters and, various different, people who belong to different types of societies exist. So this is just one. So there's no barring. But in terms of like Masonry itself, it has nothing to do with the BGLOs. Although, you have members who are a part of those, whether it's the 4-letter, 3-letter, for those who understand what that means, Masons, nothing would bar them from being a part of that. And he says, that's the disingenuous part, though. I know that where people are getting it wrong, and I know the information, I just informed them. You were misinformed on what you were stating earlier, so I'm kind of cautious or weary about what you're informing people on. But it's neither here nor there. Let me see. He said D9 and Du Bois helped sabotage Black nationalism from Booker T to Garvey. No, and this is what I mean. Like, people take the beef that W.B. Du Bois and Garvey was having as representative of the D9 itself. Like all the organizations got together and helped sabotage Garvey. It's like, no, that's where are you getting that from? And this is why, and outside of this conversation, this is why I recommend everyone to take Africana Studies courses, like legit Africana Studies history courses, not some random YouTube videos from folks or a random article that you search online on Google. Actual Africana Studies courses, so that you can get context for these types of discourses, and so that people don't be making these outlandish and wild claims from repeating misinformation from Steve Coakley and Bobby Hemmett and Dr. York and all this other kind of craziness. let me see. Most African Americans are sympathetic to socialist Marxist ideas because of D9, and again, just silliness. Let me see. There needs to be slightly more evolution in terms of intellectual decolonization as it relates to Black Greeks. Stop hazing, paddling, beating, and branding. Change the name and symbols. Nope, these are corporations, and they incorporated themselves early in the 20th century under these names. They're not going to change the name. If you are that serious, start a new organization with all of the things that you claim that is lacking from the other groups. This is what I mean. Intellectual, we're too intellectually lazy, and we're too, and this is as a collective. You think that these people are going to change these organizations that have been in existence over 100 years. These organizations weren't started yesterday to fit your idea of what an organization should be. You just create your own organization and you do better. It's that simple. Like y'all, like let me add this here. Let me go back, and because we have this saying, in Alpha, like this is our motto. It's first of all, servants of all, we shall transcend all. And I want to focus on those first three words. First of all. The first of all is a challenge for those people who are members of Alpha Phi Alpha to always be pioneers in things, to be the first to do something and be something anywhere. That is the challenge that we have for members who are of Alpha Phi Alpha. And what I find in the lay community is that y'all is a lot of us just don't want to pioneer anything. Like Europeans, they have this emphasis for them to be explorers and for them to pioneer and do things. And a lot of times in our communities, you have people who are just lazy, who don't want to pioneer anything. You don't wait on anybody. Like for example, when I created the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology, do you think I was going to wait for and try to change how Europeans and the University of Chicago or the University of Pennsylvania or the German school or the schools in London and how they do Egyptology and how they focus? You think I'm gonna waste my life, my time, and energy waiting for them to change something to an ideal that I believe is better? No, I'm going to put in the work and I'm going to create that because it is in me to be first of all, pioneering in thought and things. This is why I come up with concepts like Kimoyo in framing African religions and coming up with a name for African Americans. I'm not waiting on anybody to do anything. I just do. I don't make excuses. I don't cry. I don't complain. I don't worry about anything that other people are doing. I just do. And that's the difference here. They don't have to do jack. You have to. If the spirit put it on you that something needs to change, you need to be the pioneer to make it happen. You are wasting your time thinking that that organizations that are over 100 years old and incorporated under certain bylaws and names are going to change because you want them to fit your ideal. It's not going to happen. You make it happen. You pioneer. And that's the mentality and the attitude that builds nations. Don't wait on nobody. Be first of all. And transcend these limited mentalities that keep people, suppressed and just on the internet complaining all day. If you are truly an African, you would believe, or you would hold true the belief that you came here to accomplish something, that you were here to help, that it was not a coincidence that you came in this form amongst this community with the certain gifts that you've been given. And if you do believe that, you don't worry about what others are doing. You came here to complete your mission. So don't complain about what everybody's doing. Do you? You build the organizations. If you see something lacking, you build it. It's just as simple as that. If you don't like Marxist ideology, if you don't like socialist ideology, you create the ideology and you put in the work to convince everybody else that it is better than Marxist or socialist and all that other kind of stuff. You do that. But D9 has no political, they don't believe in Marxism or socialism or none of that, because these organizations aren't designed for that. They have no political stance. And they can't have a political stance because you have too many different people and different value systems. It's a totally different purpose. Y'all have this confused on what is the purpose of these organizations. So it says we had the Black Panthers, or we had the Panthers. You still have the Panthers, but do you support them? But what brought the Panthers down besides COINTELPRO? It's issues of integrity. People on drugs, people abusing the women in the organizations, people just believing any old rumors and having bad blood between each other. That's why the Panthers fell. Because they didn't have a system in which that there was a brotherhood, that there was no system of accountability in the same way that you would have in a fraternal organization, or, for example, the Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam been hit by COINTELPRO, but they were able to thrive. Why? Because they had a system in place that other groups didn't. They ain't African centered for nothing. Let me see. He said Bishop Richard Allen was Divine 9, not D9. He was Divine, not D9. And like, how old was he? Says, do you think the denying leadership sit down with Pan-African leadership to figure out how we can help each other? They've already done that. And you keep forgetting that some of the Pan-African leaders are D9 members. He says, so basically, Brother Unc could not join any frat. Well, he would have to join. He would have to be in college. He would have to go to college to join a frat. So that's the first thing. You have to have 12 credit hours at minimum. So unless Brother Unc goes to a university, no, he can't join any of the D9. So, but Brother Unc understands these things. Brother Unc been in the military. He's a Marine. So they have their own brotherhood, their own system there. He says, I'm still waiting on Pan-Hellenic explanation to why Black Greeks go to. Black Greeks don't go to Pan-Hellenic anything. It's just a Pan-Hellenic is just the umbrella term and organization for all the Black, the Divine 9 Black Greek letter organizations, and they come and meet with each other to kind of outline and see what is going on the campus, so that you don't have scheduling conflicts and the like, and or that they'll do joint programming or whatnot on the campus. What is this? Where are you getting this idea that Panhellenic has any kind of political organizational tie? It is nothing. It has nothing to do with that. Y'all. It just shows the ignorance that we have concerning this situation. It says, "I'm sorry, Bishop Richard Allen, born in 1716." That's what exactly. I'm like, what era are you talking about? Like, just silly stuff. The math ain't mathing. Um, when did we start being anti-socialism and anti-Marxist? Sounds like someone else's argument. Of course it is. These are people who don't study history. They don't know what socialism is and anti, or what Marxist is, what they agree with and what they disagree with. You know. Let's see, Jehuti. I know this is off topic, but I have a question. Did you and Wujaru ever come out with the book breaking down the true meaning of the term Kemet and not the meaning of the land of the blacks? We came out with that preliminary book, but I'm coming out. I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but I'll re-mention it now. That at the end of this summer, I will be coming out with this book, Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1, Towards a Meaning for the Place Named Kemet. So this will be a full book scale text, with my full arguments. And so the first text included Brother Sanjeti and Brother Wujawu. And so they won't be a part of this text. More than likely, they will be a part of Volume 2. So that's going to be an edited work, and I'm going to have a number of other scholars contributing to the work as well. And so we'll be dealing with the race and identity question in more depth in Volume 2. And then in Volume 3 is going to be the primary source material, which it'll have in the original languages so that people can follow, and transliterations of the Greeks and others describing the ancient Egyptians, and so it'll be a resource book for those of you who are engaged in these types of conversations, and where people are trying to argue that the Egyptians were not black, quote unquote, by today's standards. So it's a 3-part series. And so Volume 1, this is exclusively myself, but Volume 2, Brother Wujawu and Sanjeti and Dr. Shamarka Keita and Dr. Vanessa Davies and others will be contributing chapters to that particular text. So I hope that makes sense. All righty. So let me see here. Let's see. He says, "You ever read the writings of Marcus Garvey, Harold Cruz?" Of course. I mean, and just to remind you that I am an Africologist. I'm an African American Studies and African Studies scholar. And so, of course, all of this stuff I studied this stuff professionally at the university level. And so, all of this stuff I'm very familiar with. And that's how I know for a fact that most of what people are talking about in these internet streets is a bunch of misinformation, and they have no context and have not read much of the information going on here. And so, he says, "A little Garvey, we as a community." I don't know what that is in response to. And thanks to Sister Tamika for promoting the spreadshirt.com. And so you can find these different shirts. I don't promote them as much. I should, but you'll find a whole bunch of different designs. But in terms of the images, these are all I got on here. So the Bayan Kole, the Kimoyo, and coming soon as the Black is Not a Race, it's a Vibe. And I have a series called My Optimatics for my Rude Boy Juju line. And so this is the F of X for those who get it in terms of the t-shirt. So more and more is coming. And so thank you, Sister Mika, for sharing the link. And So, Prince Hall Masons, father of all Greeks. Nope, because then you would have Greeks. Prince Hall would be represented by Greek letters if he was a father and was modeling. Like, people just make up anything. They came before the Black Greek letter organizations on college campuses. That is true, but they have nothing to do with the founding. Um, he says they should change because as critical thinkers, they would know our people need independent institutions. If another race went through 400 years of terrorism, they would work together. Again, you haven't paid attention this whole thing, like, for example, these letters here represent the first brotherhood of the Ethiopians. You don't get any more African than that at all. And so it would be, you just got to study, and there's no substitute for study. He says, what's the purpose, mission, goal of the D9? You can easily look that up online. He says D9 and Du Bois undermine Pan-Africanism. How? Give an example. He says, where is the Berlin Conference amongst our organization? Like, just silly questions. The founders did not have a race first mentality. You really need to read. If they were, their mission would have been to build independent schools for our children. No, that's an individual. These are not, again, what you're trying to talk about here is stuff that you need a government for. And the Berlin Conference was in the 1800s. Like, what are you talking about? And so, some of these members have already created independent schools. But as far as the children is concerned, you have to fund the schools by collecting taxes. And you can't collect taxes unless you have a private school where everyone has enough money to pay for the schooling. You're going to have to do public schools for most Black children, or charter schools, and that stuff is paid through taxes, and you can't collect taxes as a D9 organization. Like, basic knowledge we just lack in this community. Let me see. Let me respond as an ancestor of Omega, the greatest enemy of Pana. The ancestor of Omega. Okay, you just just making up stuff. The problem is we weren't raised enough Pan-African children, because a Pan-African young adult going to college would not pledge. That's a lie. A lot of Pan-Africans pledge these Black Greek organizations. They already done it and they'll continue to do it. So you're just going to have to be in your feelings for the rest of your life. It is what it is. Jehuti Ronetta says, thank you. You're welcome. And then rest in peace, Tony Brown. And so I don't see any more questions, and we're going on 3 hours now. So hopefully, for those who actually paid attention, I hope you learned a little something, and we'll probably keep the conversation going on at a different time. But for anyone saying that these organizations are anti-African and don't have any African, and they're trying to be Greek, it is conscious community mythology. And we just got to stop that. And so there are some legit issues that and problems that exist between these or within these organizations, but they're not unique to Black Greek lettered organizations. You find that regardless to where you go. And it is what it is. And so with that being said, y'all be easy. I'll probably have another conversation later on this week, and I'm trying to schedule an interview, and so I'll keep you abreast to that. And so, of course, if you need to find me, you could find me on these social media platforms, in these social media streets. and thank each and every one of you who have, supported either through donations or hitting the like button or asking questions, no matter how crazy they are. So I appreciate each and every one of you. If you have further questions, of course, you can ask in the comment section. And so y'all have a good night and a good and productive week. And I will see you all soon. Peace.
That's on my mind, and I would like to let them out. Look, I see reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart?